And it goes a little something like this.
Who's getting undertrained, and you might have an undertrained guy who's getting overtrained. So you get basically you get bad results is what you get. So the key feature of my system is not only did I look at the athlete. So say I found his upper cervical spine and his jaw was off, that was causing his Achilles problem. Even if his pain went away, I would say, Emile, before you go thinking that you're done here, let's look at how it is that you've got to live so that you don't get that problem again, or so if you do get hit, your neck gets thrown out, you recover faster. So between the totem pole, which is a system of hierarchical control reflexes, the nervous system's designed to keep you alive, and then having a good management system for the athletes so they understand how important rest is, how important food is, how important keeping your head focused on the target, and also to teach athletes rest is as important as the exercise and the training. Most athletes think they're getting stronger when they're training. That's backwards. When you're training, you're breaking yourself down. If you don't give yourself time to build up between sessions, you will continue to break down. And you will be an athlete who has maybe great talent, but is continually plagued by injuries, aches, pains, and then it can be very damaging to an athlete's self-esteem because the spirit inside of Emile knows how he should be running and performing, but when his body won't go, it's kind of like having a girlfriend that looks great but doesn't like sex.
So, and all the things that you're saying, and this is the thing that we're talking about frustration. People listening to this that haven't experienced the pull check system before, just looking at athletes, it's just normal for athletes to break down because of the rigors of the sport, not understanding that the way that they're being trained or overtrained or undertrained, and the way that they do group exercise, it's just like in the gym. It's like, as you said, this for that, treat the spot that hurts. All of these sort of things are creating what we perceive as a norm, and norm is you're an athlete for 10 years, you're going to break down, you're going to have a short career. Whereas the truth of the matter is, if people were using the CHEK system and actually using the 4 doctors, they would actually be able to have longevity. Why is this not being, put out so much more to the forefront? I suppose my question really is, if you have, I've gone into, specific clubs and, like what you said, I had an athlete that was traumatized and they just said, well, he needs to get back on the pitch in 2 weeks. And I don't mean Heskey, I mean another athlete. He needs to get back on the pitch in 2 weeks. And I'm like, well, he needs 5 weeks of rehab. While we need to win this game. So how do we kind of get around that? Because there's so much resistance to looking at the athlete as a human and just seeing them as a machine.
It's a problem that's forever been in professional sports, and a lot of it stems, in my opinion, from the fact that the ownership of professional sports teams see athletes the same way they see racehorses, right? Athletes to them are not human beings. They're essentially high-paid athletic slaves. That's what they are.
That's what I thought,
And the thing is they're tradable, right? They're tradable, like racehorses, like race dogs, like fighting roosters and fighting dogs and whatever, So they think that the athlete's broken, which means, well, get another athlete, find somebody else. And they say, well, we pay that guy a lot. Well, we're losing a lot of money if we're not winning. So really what it is it becomes, the athlete just becomes, shall we say, a figurine, a tool for the objective, and the objective is to win. But really, the objective is to win to sell products on television. That's the problem. It's not even about the sport anymore. It's about what can we sell people while they're watching Emile play soccer. And so it's only been recent that we're seeing a slow transition, because you get athletes that now are successful enough. You get a Kobe Bryant or a Michael Jordan or a Shaquille O'Neal, or some of these big name guys, and they say, I'm not going to play this game anymore. And what do? They find a Warren Williams or a Paul Chek. And I've had many of them that have had to fly to me in secret, because it's against the team policy to go outside for medical help. And if they do find out, they will lose their job, and they can even lose insurance policies and other things. It's quite frowned upon, and for good reason, because many therapists who are not very skilled have injured elite athletes who went to them outside the system. So it's there to protect the athlete, really, but it also puts the athlete in a box. And the box is, if the team therapists and doctors aren't very good, you're stuck in that box. So I've literally had people come to me in secret, get off, finish games, jump on airplanes and fly right to me, see me, and jump on an airplane and fly right back. And that's been going on for years. So, but once you get somebody with enough power who refuses to play that game, they start changing the rules. And so the next thing you know, they say to the team, don't use our therapist, he's lousy. Go see this guy. Well, then eventually the management finds out. The management says, well, half the team's seeing the guy anyhow, just hire him. Get him in here. So then you get the guy coming in. Well, then you get the next level of fun. They bring a guy like me in, and I show them that everything they're doing is backwards, and the doctor says, that's bullshit. Who are you? You don't even have a college degree. You don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, well, how come all these athletes are fixed when I work on them? That's the degree we should be taught. So then what you see is pissing contest. It's territorial, right? So then it becomes, so it actually is very, very hard, because guys like me don't want to put up with a lot of silliness from people with degrees that don't really know much about what they're doing. So I won't stay around long. And neither will any guy like me who's successful. So it's going to come soon where the team management's going to wise up, and they're going to realize these are big investments. To buy an Emile is a big investment, and you should protect the investment. So I think it's because of guys like you and many other CHEK practitioners, people like Greg Muller, Matthew Walden, and many of them that you know that have made it to the elite level in sports teams. Eventually somebody's going to say, okay, we need to take one of these guys and put them in charge and have the doctors work under them, which has happened in my case many times, because the doctors realize this guy knows so much more than me, it's a joke, I better just shut up. And that's what happens, when you get a team with 10 injured players and they can't do anything, and they're not even going to be able to sell kids' toys because they're going to lose so bad, then all of a sudden people pay attention. So eventually, with more influence from people like you, they're going. And the other thing is, one day you could be a coach. How did I get the job working for the Canberra Raiders? Mal Meninga, one of the most famous rugby players ever, became the coach, and he was pro alternative therapy, pro holistic therapy. And so when his strength coaches had come to some of my workshops, and when they all got in trouble, they all said, we need to get Paul Chek in here. He said, bring him in. There was no resistance whatsoever. So he was very excited to meet me. And if I said jump to the doctor, he made sure it was how high, right? So we're now seeing a generational turnover. You're 36. I guarantee you one day you will have the opportunity to be in charge of a bunch of athletes, and you will not play this game, and you will know exactly what's going on. So there's enough athletes like you now that are rising up into management positions that we're starting to see a slow transition. So that's really the problem is that a lack of education in medical professionals and treating athletes like objects instead of investments. And you got to remember, the people that own these teams are rich enough that paying a guy like you $2, $3, $4, $5 million, that's pocket change for a lot of these guys. They can spend that on dinner and not even feel. They fly jets around and it costs them $200,000 just to hop a city. So most of us don't realize kind of the level of that they live at, the way they trade money, the way they think. We're used to, like if someone says, Paul, I'm going to give you $10,000, I say, well, that's a pretty good chunk of money. But for them, $10,000, they'll throw that on a card table, right? So it's really a transitional process, and I think it's good that the athletes are actually leading the transition, because as they become management, there won't be any resistance, and then for them it'll be the athlete will now be concerned more about the quality of the therapist coming in. For example, give you another 5 years, you'll have had enough therapy to actually be more knowledgeable than most therapists. And so when someone comes in, you'll know in 2 or 3 days if they really know what they're doing or not. Because you've had Warren as a mentor. So what you'll see is there'll be a progressive transition to where people like CHEK practitioners or CHEK practitioner types will be integrated into systems. And what I propose is going to happen is they're going to have multidisciplinary systems. So they might have 2 or 3 different types of experts. Like they'll have a very skilled massage therapy team. They'll have someone like a CHEK practitioner overseeing that. And then they might have acupuncturists or people to support the athletes with things like jet lag and transitions. But the amount of money they're wasting is in the billions.
Exactly. Yeah.
If they put me in charge of any one team or league, it would completely change it because I know how to integrate all these systems. So it's a transitional process.
So do you think if, say for instance, you had one CHEK practitioner overseeing everything, it would generally save them money?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They would save massive amounts of money. I mean,
Because obviously, because a lot of the people will go obsolete because you generally don't need them there.
yeah. You mean the athlete?
Or
Well, I mean,
therapists, the additional therapists.
therapists.
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of them,
You don't.
you're just paying them to fill a pseudo role, right? Like you got a physical therapist on the team, but nobody's getting any decent therapy, so you're wasting money. And the other thing is, a lot of the professional sports teams don't actually pay those therapists that much.
Yeah, yeah, we were saying that, yeah.
The Washington Redskins offered me a job in the early 90s because I rehabbed one of their guys. Actually, I rehabbed their general manager. And he offered me $36,000 a year. I said, "You got to be kidding me!" I just said, I think at the time I was making $80,000 a year, and I said, "You're going to have to pay me more than I'm making now because I'm going to have to move in. I'm going to have to travel all over the place with you guys." I said, "I'll tell you what. You give me the equivalent of a decent player, $1 million a year, and I will walk away from my clinic and come take care of your athletes." And he said, "Oh, I couldn't do that." He said there would be a coup on the team to have a therapist making as much money as an athlete. I said, "Well, you need to get your head right because that therapist can keep all those athletes going."
Exactly.
So, one athlete is part of a team, and one good therapist can make the whole team go. Right?
Yeah.
So I said, "When you get your brain rewired, come on back and see me." And he said to me, he said, "Paul, I personally believe you're worth that. But if I did that, I would start a league-wide war, and it would just go crazy." And I said, "So what? I don't care. Hey, that's your problem. You want a good team that wins? You need a good therapist because that's really what it takes." I mean, look how they handle racehorses. They treat racehorses better than they treat athletes. They spend millions. They will bring anybody, witch doctors, whatever they got to do to make those racehorses run, and they pamper them, and they feed them the best of everything, and they give them the best drugs. I mean, the racehorses are because why? Because the racehorse is an investment, isn't it?
Yeah.
See, the big difference. They have to spend a lot of money to get the horse, and they got to spend a lot of money to keep it healthy. And even when they're done, they're like the president. They still keep them healthy, right?
Yes.
They're still famous. So eventually it'll change, but I'm just glad that you guys are, part of the transition. Because without somebody like you to go in there and say, "Look, this is what's really going on," it would never change.
Yeah. I'm kind of adding to Paul's point. When I was working with Fulham Football Club, we were talking about loads of therapists, adding to your point. At the time, the athlete I was working with had probably about 6 different therapists working on him: physio, chiropractor, osteopath, sports massage therapist, visceral manipulator, as well as a team doctor. So 6 different therapists. He was getting mobilized every single day.
Yeah.
Every single day. And I was like, "Why is he getting mobilized every single day?" "Oh, well, he's in pain and he gets tight." And I was like, "Well, why does he get tight? Why do you think he gets tight?" And I'm like, "Oh, we don't know. We just keep mobilizing him." So I was like, "Has anybody looked at his upper cervical spine?" And they're like, "No." I was like, "But you've got a chiropractor here. Why aren't you looking at his upper cervical spine?" "Oh, well, he had a leg length issue." So I said, "Right, arrange a meeting with me and all of the team doctors, all the specialists." So I went in there, I sat there, listened to them for a few minutes. and they were just talking about putting a step in his shoe because of his apparent leg length issue.
Yeah, apparent.
Yeah, apparent leg length. And I was like, wow, how do you know it's in the leg? Well, you know, we've done some tests. So they were going to put 8mm step in his shoe. And I said, okay, is that in his shoe when he's playing or when he's training? Oh, only when he's training. So I said, so what happens when he's playing? Because then his body's going to be shocked when he's playing. Yeah. And they said, oh, we'll put 5mm step. And I was like, well, that makes no sense when he's not even looked at his cervical spine. So I said to him, I've done tests and I've adjusted his cervical spine. Can you do a test on him now? And they said, okay, did a test, leg length was normal. I goes, well, why is nobody doing this? So I basically came and I said, I want every single therapist to stop working with him, give me a week.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. They allowed me a week and he was pain-free.
Yeah.
So my question on this is, I mean, you know, your answer is obvious, but why are they, you know, kind of still focusing so much on mobility and soft tissue work? Why are these so-called experts not understanding the missing gap is stability?
The old saying is, if all you've got in your pocket is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
So if you go to a massage therapist, everything from herpes to hemorrhoids to AIDS comes from trigger points.
Right, yeah.
If you go to a chiropractor, it doesn't matter if your eyebrows are falling out of your head and your teeth are rotting, it's a joint subluxation. If you go to a doctor, it's either an injection, a surgery, or a pill. There's nothing in between. So really, you got to remember, most of these types of therapies are extensions of the medical model. A physical therapist is a person that used to be a doctor's assistant during the polio era. Prior to the polio era, there was no such thing as physical therapists. But because polio is a neuron disease, if you don't exercise the person, the nervous system begins to die faster and they lose function of their body. Their limbs stop working. So what happened is, during the polio era, they would have these assistants, physicians' assistants, which were really nurses. And their job was to exercise these people, but they didn't have any other way to do it but by hand. So you might, if you had polio, I might say, okay, Emile, resist me, and I would pull on you, now resist me, and I would push on you, and I would do all the parts of his body that were affected by the polio. Well, the polio epidemic lasted quite a while, and it was quite a big scare. So what were they doing? Physical therapy. So physical therapists are actually nurses that did manual exercise. So the whole branch of physical therapy is really a physician's assistant who is acting out the same model or consciousness, which is reductionist medicine, which says we chop the body into pieces. This knee, this is my territory. The knee specialist. Hey, don't touch that knee. You belong down there. You can go there. But don't touch the knee. So what we ended up with is a whole system of experts in little parts of the body, and none of them knows how the body works together. And they never got to the point where, you know, the knee actually has relationships with your organs and your eyes and your neck and your toes. Right? So what we've got is really a standard medical model in a standard educational system that also expresses the Newtonian concept of reductionist science. If you go to school and study chemistry, well, you can learn all about chemistry, but you don't learn anything about the frog or the athlete. You just learn about what happens between a couple of molecules, and then you think you're an expert because you know the transactions of one series of enzymes, but you forget there's thousands of these things going on in there, and they all interact with each other.